Welcome to Fun Palais Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Shirley Altador, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Fun Palais Podcast, and today we have a special guest with us for story time. We have Julie, and Julie has taught yoga since she was 12 years old. Now she empowers women to enjoy leak-free laughter and pain-free sex by stabilizing the core and pelvic floor. She's passionate about using movement and laughter to release the taboo around pelvic floor instability, which she believes is the key to rediscovering your sexy, joyful self. Julie, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Shirley. I'm so happy to be here.
Excited to have you. Thank you. Thank you. I love your energy. I wanted to tell you that, but I was doing the little, all the information I need to provide, but you have such good energy. And I love that because it radiates from the screen, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Julie. So you're going to add to your bio, tell the people who you are, what you do, add a little extra spice to it if you want.
All right. Thank you. So yes, my name is Julie Bamphin. I am a pelvic floor yoga teacher and the founder of Celebrate the Pelvic Floor. Like you said, Shirley, I started teaching yoga when I was 12, literally. My mom had a school of gymnastics when I was a kid. And this is my why. I'll just drop that right now. This is my why. So my mom is like my why. So she had a school of gymnastics when I was a kid. I started gymnastics when I was like 5. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 12, I literally started teaching. I was coaching these little teeny kids who were like 4 and 5 years old. They were little Special Olympians, so they had disabilities, and we weren't practicing yoga per se. We weren't practicing gymnastics. We were practicing yoga.
Gotcha.
And so fast forward, I've been teaching some form of movement ever since, and I just turned 54, so do the math, right? And so I founded Celebrate the Pelvic Floor in about 2013. And I had been teaching yoga at that point for almost 8 years. And I started recognizing the amount of women who were talking to me about their concerns, about their core and pelvic floor. Mm-hmm. We started talking about things like sexual trauma. We started talking about things like instability. We started talking about pain in the pelvis, low back, tight hamstrings, leakage, just all of these things. And then my mom, again, my why, she has pelvic floor instability.
Okay.
And in the form of prolapse. And mom has literally been maintaining the integrity and the strength and stability of her pelvic floor for almost 17 years now. So when mom came to me with her diagnosis and her concerns with her body, she asked me, what could I do? Is there something in yoga that I could do? And I said, hell yeah. So I gave her like this little yoga routine, right? And ever since, and I'm not kidding you, and I say still to this day, she just turned 81, still to this day, she is on her back doing her pelvic floor yoga. She is teaching the women in her community. They do this program that she has created. She's been teaching for 10 years in the pool in her community in Florida, teaching other women. It's almost like a hybrid. It's like a yoga, pain relief, movement program that she calls Shine. And so that started with me 17 years ago. And geez, if mom can do it where she was at that time, that then anyone can do it, because she was in a place that was pretty scary. And she's doing great. She's never had surgery. She's just doing great.
This is great. Now, if you can tell us more, pelvis floor instability, what exactly is that?
Pelvic floor instability, or pelvic floor dysfunction, or pelvic floor disorder. There are different ways that we refer to it. So here's the thing. Let me start with, what's a pelvic floor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the pelvic floor, just like you might imagine your pelvis, any of you out there, let's just like put your hands on your hips, like you're just standing with your hands on your hips. Now your hands are kind of resting right in your hip bones, right? Your hip bones are part of your pelvis. The hip bones are the sides of the pelvis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So reach one hand in front of your pelvis and then go down just a little bit right above the clitoris, actually. And you can feel that bone, that pubic bone, right in the front of the pelvis. Yeah?
Yes.
That's where the pelvic floor muscles attaches at the front of the pelvis.
Okay.
So the pelvic floor is a whole bunch of muscles that attaches at the front of the pubic bone. Now reach around behind with your other hand. Go right down your bum crack to that bone right down there, that tailbone, the coccyx bone that's way, way down there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the pelvic floor attaches, way down there at the back of the pelvis. The pelvic floor muscles attach. Now on the sides, reach underneath one of the bum cheeks, and you'll feel, like way underneath, you'll feel that bony protuberance right at the base of the pelvis. Reach your hand right underneath the cheek, and you can feel that bony protuberance, or that sit bone, we call it in yoga, the sits bone or the sit bone. And that is the ischial tuberosity. And then reach to the other side, right underneath the bum cheek.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel that bony protuberance right down there, the sit bone. And that is the ischial tuberosity on the other side. So your pelvic floor muscles attach at the front of the pelvis at the pubic bone,
mm-hmm.
at the back of the pelvis at the tailbone, and on the sides at the ischial tuberosities, or the sit bones. The pelvic floor is 3 layers of muscles right down there at the base of your pelvis,
mm-hmm.
that help you with urinary and bowel function.
Okay.
And sexual activity.
Okay.
And those muscles also help us with stability. Yes.
So they help you with urine, bowel, and sexual activity. So these muscles kind of are the strength to keep these 3 things intact. And when we say sexual activity, are we talking about the vaginal canal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But also, so visualize this. Visualize a bowl. Everyone, let's just close our eyes. And so visualize a bowl, right? Mm-hmm. And say you take, let's say, I don't know, three tissues. And we'll just rest those 3 tissues, one on top of the other, right at the base of that bowl.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our pelvic floor, right?
Okay.
And so if you were to pee,
gotcha,
those muscles want to relax, right?
Yes.
So we can let the pee release.
Exactly.
If you need to poo, mm-hmm. again, we need to relax the muscles of the pelvic floor to allow that release. Yes?
Yes.
But if you're not ready to pee or poo, you want those muscles to engage, and you want them to squeeze and energize, so you don't have pee or poo that's actually coming out when you don't want to pee or poo.
True.
Right? And so there's the trick. So many people, not just women, but so many people lose control of these muscles. And not just when, you're 65, 75, 85, 90, but a lot of women at a very young age, especially women who have had natural childbirth, mm-hmm. lose control of these muscles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just one thing that can go wrong, that can be troublesome in this area of the body.
Gotcha. And this is what pelvic floor instability means. Now, the 2 examples you gave us for bladder and poop, how does that affect sex? How does this muscle affect sex?
Yeah. So think about what happens when we have sex, whether we're single or partnered.
Okay.
Sometimes we have penetration. Sometimes there's something going in the vaginal canal, right?
Yes.
Well, it has to go past the opening. So the opening to the vaginal canal is the vulva.
Yes.
Yes. And inside that vulva, we have muscles and tissues.
Okay.
And that is the pelvic floor.
I see.
So past the vulva, and then behind the vulva, in between the vulva and the anus,
Okay.
we have a sheath of muscles. Sometimes we hear it's called the taint,
The tank. I've never
right?
heard of that.
No?
Tank?
So with a T, T-A-I, yeah, N-T,
Oh,
taint.
okay. Tank.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the phrase might be taint pussy, taint ass.
Okay. Okay. I get you. I get you.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I get it.
So in between the vulva and the anus is the perineum.
Okay. Heard of
And
that.
it's that taint area. And it's that area, it's like a sheath of skin in between the vulva and the anus. And just inside the body
Mm-hmm.
is the pelvic floor. That's the most superficial.
Okay.
Superficial meaning the closest to the exterior of the body.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most superficial part of our pelvic floor, that perineum, that area in between the vulva and the anus, that space in there.
Gotcha.
Right? So inside there,
Mm-hmm.
inside the body, yes, and the muscles of the pelvic floor go around the openings of the anus, go around the opening of the vagina, go around the opening of the urethra where pee comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then those muscles are lying together, 3 layers, lots of fibers around them, right? And they are helping us to relax when we need to pee and poo. And they're helping us to energize when we don't want pee or poo to actually come out.
Gotcha.
But they are hopefully relaxing when we have penetration with sex.
Okay.
And they energize during erection and orgasm.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, super fascinating. Now, here's the thing. Not just women who are postpartum, not just those women are struggling with pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm here to tell you that you might hear statistics out there that maybe 50% of women will struggle with pelvic floor instability or pelvic floor dysfunction in their life. I'm here to tell you it's got to be higher. You know why?
Why?
Because there are so many women who never even talk about this.
No. This is
because they think it's normal.
Well, they shouldn't think it's normal, Julie.
But it's super duper duper common. It's so common that women leak and or women have pain during sex and or women disassociate or detach from this area of their sexual self. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And or they feel the dropping,
mm-hmm.
right? So here's another thing. We've got internal organs, and that's another responsibility of the pelvic floor muscles, is they help to support those internal organs.
Exactly.
Uterus, okay. Rectum, bladder. Like, how are those staying inside of our body? We've got holes down there, and things could, start to drop. Yes, because gravity's real, right? And those muscles need to stay stable and strong.
Pelvic floor instability, is that the same as a prolapse? So
prolapse is a pelvic floor dysfunction. Prolapse is when the pelvic floor is unstable.
Got it.
But when we say pelvic floor instability or pelvic floor dysfunction, it doesn't necessarily mean prolapse, because there are different instabilities. There are different dysfunctions.
Very interesting. Thank you for dissecting and explaining so I can understand. I appreciate that, because now I have a better, clear idea when someone says pelvic floor instability, what exactly they're talking about, what exactly they mean. And I did not know, and I have no shame in saying that was the pelvic floor. In my mind, I just thought it was in the front and that's it. I didn't realize it was a full connection altogether. I just thought it was that area. When you showed us first, you touch your hips and then you go down right at the top, the bone at the top of the clit. That's all I thought. Now you're talking about touch your tailbone, touch the bone at the bottom of your buttocks.
So let me just clarify, Shirley. So when I wanted you to put your hands on your hips, that was just to bring your hands to your pelvis. Yeah. So the tops of the pelvis, that's not where the pelvic floor is. It's definitely down at the bottom of the pelvic bowl.
Okay.
Like I was referring to.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it the pelvic bowl because the pelvis is like a bowl. And so at the base of the pelvic bowl is where the pelvic floor muscles lie.
Gotcha.
And so let's all bring our hands all you ladies out there, let's bring your hands right in front and touch your thumbs together. Point your palms away, and just look at the backs of your hands and your fingernails. And wow, I need to repaint my fingernails. Anyway, so bring your thumb tips together and your index fingers together.
Okay.
And all your fingers are straight. Your palms are facing out. And you look at that space in between your fingers and you see a diamond, right?
Yes.
Yes. Now turn it down and rest it below your belly button, right at your low belly. So your thumbs are kind of like on your belly button and your fingertips are pointing down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a nice deep breath. Close your eyes, celebrating self in this moment. This is a really groovy, ancient technique. So bringing the hands into this shape, and you can keep eyes closed or you can open them again. And so just visualizing that diamond shape. This is one of the shapes of one of the layers of the muscles in the pelvic floor. How cool is that?
That is awesome. I like this little interactive podcasting. I know they can't see us, but they can, you're teaching them and you're telling them what to do.
Yeah, it's meditation.
This is
groovy
good.
Stuff.
I like this.
Yeah,
I'm going to try this.
That is a hand gesture that we do in yoga. It's called a mudra. And a mudra is symbolizing something profound. And this is our mudra that is called the yoni mudra. It's almost like yoga sign language. Mm-hmm. So the yoni is the symbol of the womb. Mm-hmm. The yoni is the symbol of the vagina and the vulva. And our sacred female primal power. Mm-hmm. Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is one of the shapes of one of the layers of the muscles of the pelvic floor. Now, another shape that we have in the musculature of the pelvic floor is that long, skinny figure 8, that infinity symbol.
Okay. I've heard of that.
Yeah, and so that's yet another shape of one of the other layers of the pelvic floor muscles. So that it's so cool. There's just so much groovy information about the pelvic floor. And you're right, like how many of us even think about this? Like when do we even talk about it unless we're with a bunch of girlfriends and we're all giggling and one of us says, "Oh my God, don't make me laugh, I'm going to pee my pants."
And she really means it.
Yes.
And that's her way of saying it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then what do? We kind of giggle for a second and then we change the subject.
Quickly.
So here's my challenge to you, to all these women who are out there listening. The next time that happens, have the conversation. Say that you heard a conversation. Say that you heard this podcast interview. Say that people are talking about this. And you know what? If you leak, bestie, that's not normal. That's not common. And you don't have to leak forever. There are so many women out there who leak. And it's called stress incontinence. When you laugh and you leak, that's called stress incontinence. When you cough, sneeze, run, jump, dance, laugh, play, pick up your kid, pick up your heavy pocketbook, and you leak, that's called stress incontinence. And we're not leaking because we're feeling stress. We're leaking because we're putting stress on those muscles of the pelvic floor.
Got it. This is good.
And the muscles of the pelvic floor can't hold in the pee, so the pee comes out a little bit and we leak.
And if I can add another visual, is this, and tell me if this is wrong, is it kind of like when a rubber band is kind of stretched out, like it's really getting to the point where it's stretched out, because those muscles are supposed to contract back. So when they start to kind of get a little stretchy, and I know I'm saying this in the most immature probably way, but
not at all.
Is this also what's happening on the inside where they're getting a little too loose for whatever the reason may be?
Absolutely. So here's the deal. If we never work the muscles of our arms. So say that we've got this arm here and we don't use it, right? We don't lift anything. We don't, we stop lifting the dumbbells. We stop lifting up this heavy iPad I have here, my whatever. We stop doing the laundry, folding the clothes, working the muscles of the arms. Like we don't have to go to the gym and do, big, huge weights to use our muscles. If we stop using our muscles, then they're going to atrophy and they're not going to work for us when we need them to work for us, right? Same thing with the pelvic floor. It's just anatomy. It's just a bunch of muscles. So
Okay.
if we are, let's say, having a baby, if
Mm-hmm.
we are going to bring that extra weight of pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
to the body,
Mm-hmm.
the pelvic floor needs to be on her game, because
Yes.
where is that weight of the baby being held? It's being
Sitting.
held in the pelvic floor.
Exactly. Sitting right there for
Exactly.
40 weeks.
Right. And so then we go through childbirth, and that area, especially for giving birth vaginally,
Mm-hmm.
naturally, that area hopefully relaxes to allow that baby to easily slide right on out into the world, right?
Exactly.
But even if we're going to go through a cesarean birth, those muscles of the pelvic floor are still super taxed,
Yeah.
right? They are still burdened big time. I mean, they're just burdened sitting here.
Yeah.
Gravity's real, right? So when we put on extra weight, whether we're pregnant or not, we are burdening the pelvic floor muscles.
I've never, first of all, the only thing I've heard close, Julie, was Kegels. And Kegels is just
Yes.
kind of thrown out there, not really, it's not a real conversation because yet
Oh,
again,
yeah, it certainly is. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Absolutely. Go ahead.
but people just kind of throw it to the wayside because any conversation that involves talking about sex, that involves talking about your vagina is really truly frowned upon and it's not discussed any further. And that's the
Right.
only thing I ever heard of Kegels, like long time ago. Is like, oh yes, you should do this. This is good. And I heard it because I used to sell sex toys. When I sold sex toys, that was the first time I heard of Kegel muscles that are good for you to do. And then they had showed me these balls that you could stick up there to help strengthen them. First time in my life I ever heard of this. And then I'm like, I'm supposed to stick these balls up my vagina, these little balls, and I'm supposed to contract the muscles and keep them up there so they don't fall out. She was like, yes. I'm like,
Right.
what the fuck?
Right, right, exactly. What the fuck? So here's the thing. All right. So for those of you out there who are like, Kegel, what? All right. So back in the 1940s, I'll
Uh-huh.
say that again, 1940s, Dr. Arthur Kegel, I mean, you got to hand it to him. Like, how progressive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant, wonderful. 1940s, again. So Dr. Arthur Kegel said, hey, how about I start to pass this word around that, it's going to be really good for you if you squeeze the muscles of your vaginal canal after you've had a baby so you can bring those muscles back into, your everyday working life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we're like, ooh, this works well. But then what happened was everybody thought they should be practicing Kegels all day, every day. And so a lot of women heard about Kegel exercises, and literally it's squeezing the muscles of your vaginal canal. And as that's super progressive for the 40s, today is today. And so what we know now is just like any other muscle, I can't just squeeze if I walked around like holding my arm up like I'm Rosie the Riveter, the arm that comes up and like,
Yeah.
brr, I'm super strong. I've got the biggest bicep in the world. If I keep this bicep nice and tight and short and squeezing all day long, what's going to happen? I'm not going to be able to open my arm. I'm not going to be able to stretch my arm. So I'm here to tell you that what I teach in my program, Celebrate the Pelvic Floor,
Mm-hmm.
is how do we activate these muscles to squeeze them, but also how do we release them?
Gotcha.
Because so many women come to me and say, I don't know what's going on. I'm doing my Kegels every day, and then I sit down on the toilet and I pee for 2 seconds, and then I wipe and I get up to walk away, and I feel like I got to pee again.
Mm.
And you know what I say to that? Just because we're tight doesn't mean we're strong. Just because we're tight doesn't mean we're strong. So many women out there are experiencing another form of incontinence, which is called urge incontinence.
Urge.
Urge incontinence is when we feel like we have to pee, so we go pee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 seconds later, we got to pee again. Or say and or we've got to pee all day long,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or we've got to wake up 3, 4, 5 times a night to pee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Hello, sleep. Sleep, for the record, is the most important thing ever. But there are so many women waking up all night long to pee. And the first thing I ask them is, are you doing Kegels? Why, yes, I am. I'm doing 1,000 a day. Stop doing Kegels. So there are millions of women out there who are practicing Kegels, but not all of us should be doing so. And those of us maybe who should, they might not be doing it right. Right? So I would love to just say, all right, let's maybe have another conversation about the Kegels, because that is not everything.
Okay.
I want to educate you on, first of all, what your pelvic floor is, what its capacity is, which is amazing and beautiful, not just squeeze, but also how to influence it. And there are such easy ways that we can influence those muscles of the pelvic floor, but it's not easy because it's very, very subtle work. It's not easy to feel those muscles for a lot of us.
It's not.
So it takes practice.
And it's a very strong muscle too.
Yes, for some.
For some is right.
For some.
For some is right. What we can hold up there. Because if you can carry a baby up there, almost up to 10 pounds.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so the balls that you were talking about that some women might put into the vaginal canal, those are called Benoit balls or vaginal balls or whatever they're called. So those are okay. I don't want to say I endorse that.
Gotcha.
I would have to talk to you. I would have to know what's going on with your pelvic floor if I were to say, yeah, that's a good idea. But before that, why try that if we can try something on the yoga mat? I mean,
exactly.
What I'm teaching you is something that you can practice in real life. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything extra. You don't have to take any extra time. You can practice this stuff in real life. And that's what's really cool about my program is I'm teaching women how to breathe, how to move, how to stand, how to sit, how to make adjustments along the way. Because this pelvic floor is always there. Right? It's always going to be there. And we're going to be sitting, we're going to be standing, we're going to be moving around, we're going to be sneezing, we're going to be laughing. And I'm here to teach you how to do all that while at the same time finding stability in your pelvic floor muscles.
This is great because I never thought yoga. I mean, I do know yoga is good for a lot of things, but I'm realizing now that yoga is really, truly good for a lot of things when it comes to your body.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
Oh, for sure. It's all I do. Yeah. And it physically, mentally, spiritually, sexually, emotionally, all of the levels of wellness, right? Not just physically. Like yoga is not just a bunch of poses. That's just one branch on the yoga tree. It's a big tree.
Yeah, I do realize this.
We've got the poses. We've got the mudra, like I talked about before, the hand gestures. We've got meditation. That falls under the yoga tree. We've got mantra. One of my mantra is, I am practicing, I am practicing, I am practicing. Mantra is a word, a sound, or a phrase that when repeated can provide positive transformation. So one of the mantra that we repeat in my program, in Celebrate the Pelvic Floor, because we're dealing with this area of sensuality, this area of joy and emotion and creation and creativity, which is the low belly and pelvic floor, one of the mantras is, I feel.
I feel.
I am going with the flow. I am feeling groovy. I mean, all of these really flowy, sensual, thoughts and feelings and mantra. Those are great mantra. If you're feeling stuck in this area, if you already know that you've got pelvic floor instability or pelvic floor dysfunction, there are some beautiful mantra that you can practice that can take you back to this sacred space. I've got a free training and I'll drop the link for you.
Did you send that to me?
Yes, actually I did. I did
Good.
Send that to you. Yeah, I've got a free training that that explains all this stuff in detail. And then of course my paid program, which is, covering all of it. Like you'll learn everything and more that you've ever wondered about your core and floor in my paid program.
Now, I have a question for you. Your mom was your why. She taught gymnastics. You were teaching the younger children when you were 12 years old. Now, that big gap, what, first of all, made you start doing yoga? Did you personally experience something that you moved into the pelvic floor, which is a big focus for you?
That's a good question. So I started practicing yoga when I was three,
12.
4 or 5 years old. Yeah,
Oh.
because gymnastics is sort of like a nowadays yoga. It's an
Mhm.
acrobatic yoga, and so there's a lot of yoga that we practiced on the mat when I was teeny tiny, and then
Mhm.
when I started teaching, and literally my first student was 4 years old, and she had spina bifida, which is a physical impairment that renders you paralyzed, and so she was paralyzed from the waist down.
Mhm.
And so we were on the mat in the
Mhm.
gym,
Mhm.
and we were doing yoga poses. So I've been practicing yoga my entire life. So when I became an adult,
Mhm.
I started actually going to a yoga studio
Okay.
to practice the true tradition and the movements of yoga. And I very soon thereafter just dived into the program
Mhm.
and became certified. And so I probably was teaching, well, let's say probably maybe just 4 years
Mhm.
until I started realizing, hey, I need to really start looking into women's pelvic floor wellness.
Okay.
That being said, when I became certified in pelvic floor yoga,
Mhm.
part of the certification is to really go deep. You
Okay.
know, introspection is encouraged, and considering your pelvic floor journey, considering what went down like back in the day.
Mhm.
When did you first get your period? What was your first experience with sex? What went down when you realized you could take care of that space in a manicured way? Do you shave? Do you wear thongs? What are the habits that you have around this space? What's your
Mhm.
sex life like? How do you feel about sex? How do you feel about sensuality? Do
Mhm.
you dance? Do you masturbate? Like all of these questions, all of this was going on when I was moving through my certification process in my pelvic floor yoga journey.
What? They ask you all these questions?
Not necessarily, but the question was, what's your pelvic floor story?
Ah.
And so me being a yogi, being a poet, being someone who's super introspective,
Mhm.
I gave it a lot of thought because,
Gotcha.
that's my jam.
Yeah,
Like
that's your
I've got to
jam.
know my pelvic floor story because this is my jam.
Yeah.
And so I've been giving all of this a lot of thought and a lot of feeling for a good 7 years now. And even before then, because my
Mhm.
mom's pelvic floor dysfunction was diagnosed 17 years ago, so of course I
Okay.
started thinking about it back then, but really started diving into like what my pelvic floor story is,
Mhm.
because it's not just a physical space.
Mhm.
This is a very sacred, sexual, sensual, creative space. Like this is what makes us us,
Yeah. Very
right? Like
true.
this is what makes us us. And it's not just a physical bunch of muscles. There's a lot of beautiful energy there, and there's a lot of grief that we hold there. There's a lot of joy that we hold in this space, but there's also a lot of shame.
Mhm.
According to yoga tradition, this is where we hold our joy, but it's also where we hold our shame and our fear. So there's a lot of talk around that. There's a lot of talk around trauma and healing some of this energetic imbalance. It's
Now the
really interesting stuff.
Now, Julie, the clients, when they come to you, are they coming to you more for medical reasons or for sexual reasons or a twirl of both?
Yes, yes, yes. I've heard everything, Shirley. I've heard women crying and sharing with me, I'm the first person they've told. They haven't had sex in a long time. They're afraid to even go there. The last time they had sex, it was hurting. They don't know why. They've experienced sexual trauma. And now it's bringing this space in between not only their relationship with their partner, but their relationship with their own body and their own space. I've spoken to women who are just curious about how to mend their core. You know, when we're pregnant, that core space and the pelvic floor, just for the record, the pelvic floor is the most fundamental part of the core. So I'll say that again. The pelvic floor is the most fundamental part of the core. The core is the pelvic floor at the base, right? So visualize your torso, the space between your shoulders and your pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is at the base of your pelvis, yeah. The front of your body, your low abdominal region, your transverse abdominis, is that muscle sheath that goes from hip bone to hip bone in the front, right below your belly button. And then other muscles that are that comprise the core, your rectus abdominis, which is that six-pack area that's above the belly button, right? And then on the sides of the body, we have the obliques.
Exactly. My love handles.
We've also got core muscles that run along the back body, right? So we've got all kinds of muscles, and I believe there are even more muscles that are part of the core. So the pelvic floor is the most fundamental part of the core. But I have women who come to me and they want that flat tummy again. Okay, I've had my baby. I'm ready to start working my core again. Does that have anything to do with the pelvic floor? And I'm like, hell yes, it does, girl. Let's go. And so we start to really bring that core, that high core above the belly button. We start to bring that back together because there is all sorts of what's called abdominal separation that happens during pregnancy. And or just your typical weight gain. Some people can experience abdominal separation, which is when the musculature of that rectus abdominis above the belly button is starting to move apart. There's that line that runs down the center of the belly, and we might see it on a pregnant belly. It's called the linea alba, right? And sometimes those muscles that run right down that center of the abdomen can separate during pregnancy. And it's very typical. It's super duper common. However, if we don't bring that back together, right? And sometimes this is called diastasis recti. This is yet another core instability. If we don't bring those muscles back together, then we might be experiencing the mommy pooch. It's called little mommy pooch that happens in the front of the belly, high in the belly. And we can be also experiencing back pain and pelvic pain and ... And leakage. I mean, so there's a lot that's going on in this space.
That's very interesting to hear. So that line that goes down the belly when you're pregnant, it's called the linear, what did you say?
Linea. Linea. Alba. ALBA. Linea alba. So yeah, talking about the pelvic floor like it's not part of the core is like talking about peanut butter without talking about jelly.
Exactly, because it's all connected, Julie.
Exactly. Yes.
It's all connected.
So yes, women come to me for medical reasons, for sexual reasons, for, physical reasons, but they also come for sexual, energetic, and emotional reasons, because this is our place of emotion.
It is our place of emotion.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the sex part of it, because I love talking about some sex. So now when the women are coming to you, because it's terrifying to me to hear a woman coming to you and saying, I have not had sex in a long time. To me, if you're living with your partner and they're not either incapacitated or far away, why are you not having sex at least once a week? I'm not a coach. This is not my area of expertise, but to me, it's already sounds alarming. So what are the common things without, putting anybody's information out there that you're hearing that why are they not having sex for a long time? What is hurting? And are they not talking to their gynecologist? I'm pretty close to my gynecologist, and I've always asked her questions. Is it that these women are scared to speak to their gynecologist and they have there's a connection that they built with you? You've built their trust.
Yeah. So this is a difficult thing to answer because there are a lot of answers to this.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of answers that are really frustrating. And you'll see what I mean in 1 second.
Okay.
So I can't tell you how many women who have told me, and no judgment out there, doc, I can't tell you how many women who have told me that they have heard from their doctors, oh, it hurts when you have sex? Well, just have a glass of wine and relax. Mm-hmm.
That's what the physician has said.
Yes. And that is unacceptable.
That's like, just take an Ativan, knock yourself out.
Right.
Right.
And I'm saying, don't say that, for God's sake. Just send them my way and I will teach this woman about her pelvic floor. So, sometimes that's an interesting conversation. Sometimes it's going to be fruitful to have the conversation with the gynecologist, with the urologist, and or the doctor in obstetrics. However, they have their specialty.
Yes.
And they're good at their specialty. But the pelvic floor is the pelvic floor.
Yeah.
And that is a specialty unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So those of us who teach pelvic floor yoga, those of us who are pelvic floor physical therapists, those of us who are pelvic floor physiologists, those of us who are in the pelvic floor world, we're talking about the pelvic floor. But gynecology and urology and obstetrics, that might be a different conversation because of their specialty. And that's cool. That's okay. And it's okay to say, I don't know. But I don't know if a lot of doctors do that. I don't know. I'm not saying that to be flip. So sometimes women will come to me, and again, they will tell me that that's what they've heard. They will also come to me and say, I've never talked about this with my doctor. I don't talk to my doctor about my sex life, even though she's my gynecologist or he's my gynecologist. But I want to ask you, Julie. And they say, why does it hurt when I have sex? Or why does it hurt when I try to orgasm? Or why am I not going there anymore? Right? Like, there are different answers for those questions, and I've heard them all many times.
What type of pain? Help me understand, what type of pain are they experiencing? Is the penis too large? Is it the fact that there's bruising? What pain, quote unquote, are they saying they're having?
And so this brings me back to our conversation about Kegels. So remember, when we squeeze the vaginal canal,
yes,
we squeeze the vaginal canal, right? So just bring one hand up and make a gentle, not a super tight, just a gentle fist.
Got it.
Now take just one of your fingers from your other hand and put it inside that fist. Okay. And just put it in there so you can get it in there, right?
Got it.
Now take that finger out. Yep. Now squeeze your fist tighter. Now try to get that finger in there.
Not going in. It's harder.
Exactly. Yes, it's much harder, right? So visualize, or let's say imagine, if that tight fist were your vaginal canal. And you're trying to allow in a tampon. You're trying to allow in a finger. You're trying to allow in a penis. You're trying to allow in a dildo, or whatever you're trying to put into that vaginal canal. If you're super duper duper tight,
it's going to hurt.
Hurts.
Yeah, it's going to hurt. So you pretty much feel like a virgin again.
Maybe, or it's so tight that you just don't want to do it.
That's frightening. That is frightening.
Yeah.
And
or the emotions that arise and or trigger points, because it's tissue. And it's an area that a lot of women have been traumatized. So there might be some trauma. There might be some trigger points. There might be some clenching that happens during these situations simply because of anxiety, trauma, memories. Yeah. And so what do we do when we're stressed out? we clench,
We clench.
right?
That's what we do.
Yes.
And
And
you
those
don't
deep
even
muscles of the
realize it.
core and the pelvic floor clench
Yes.
when we're stressed.
Do you have their partner come in as well in your classes to talk to them so they can understand? Because are these women letting their significant others know? Or they just...
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And that's not something I've done yet, Shirley. I love that idea though. I mean, not a lot. I mean, this program is specifically for women.
Uh-huh.
And I have not had partners
Okay.
in my program yet. I actually have had two women in my program, and my mom is gay, and so she and her partner know everything that I teach, and they love it. And they know a lot about this now, of course, too, because of mom's instability. So yes, Deb, my mom's partner, is very adept at a lot of this information, but I typically don't talk to unless it's a private practice. I do have a private practice.
Okay.
And I teach one-on-one.
Okay.
And so a lot of my clients are men. Most of them are women.
Oh, okay.
But a number of them are men. And they're with me for traditional yoga. But the conversation always does come to the core and the pelvic floor, because that's my specialty.
Yeah.
And men have a pelvic floor too. And they
do.
want to make sure that it's working and stable as it can be. I mean, who doesn't want to stay as stable as they can be forever and ever?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, but that's a great idea to have the conversation with the partner, if the partner is male with a penis, to have that conversation about, this is maybe the reason why she's not gung-ho about this anymore. And again, coming back to, is it physical? Is it emotional and mental? Sorry, emotional and energetic and or mental.
Yes.
Because it can be all of the above.
It can. It definitely
so that's
can.
the conversation that we have as soon as I bring in a new member into my program. I have the conversation and I ask all the questions, and we come to some pretty aha moments. It's beautiful.
That's good. This is enlightening for me because, Julie, I have never thought of the pelvic floor past what it is. I mean, granted, some of the stuff you're sharing with me, I knew some of it, but not to the educational level of what you have taught in this brief period of time. I never thought about it like that. I've never even thought, like you said, can you imagine walking around with me just holding my muscle just like this all day? First of all, people would be like, what the hell are you doing and why?
Right. Why are you squeezing your arm to make a big bicep?
Yes.
Like you're a
why?
tough girl. Yeah.
And then when you explain it to me like that, it makes a lot of sense. Why would you walk around tightening your vaginal wall all day for as long as you possibly can?
Exactly. And you know what? Zillions of women out there don't even realize they're doing it.
No, they don't.
And and some of them do. But if they're the ones who are working out like wild, if they're the runners, if they're the spinners, if they're doing spin, if they're running, if there are yogis, there are a lot of yogis with pelvic floor dysfunction, if they are women who are, quote, type A, if they are women who are getting shit done, right? They're busy, busy, busy. Those are typically the women who are holding anxiety. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And I'm telling you, if you're holding anxiety, because I struggle with anxiety myself, you tend to clench in your core. And if you're clenching in your core, you're clenching in your pelvic floor. If you're holding tension in your jaw, here's a mind-blowing fact. If you hold tension in your jaw, chances are great you're holding tension in your pelvic floor.
What does holding tension in your jaw mean?
So a lot of people clench their jaw.
Just like that. Right? Okay.
Some people clench their jaw while they sleep. Some people clench their jaw just like randomly at different times. If you hold tension in your jaw, if you're a jaw clencher, then please reach out to me and I can help you. Because if you're holding tension in your jaw, you are absolutely holding tension in your pelvic floor. And the reason is this: the connective tissue that connects right at the base of the jaw runs right down your body, goes through the center of self, goes through your diaphragm, and goes right through your pelvic floor, down the inner legs, all the way down, and it connects at the base of your feet. So that line, it's called the deep front line of the fascia, and the fascia is our deepest connective tissue. So that connective tissue, we call it connective tissue for a reason, because it's all connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the connective tissue that attaches at the base of the jaw runs right through the pelvic floor as well. So if we're holding tension in the jaw, if we've had braces,
That's a
those of
cause
us
as
who've had
well.
braces may be holding tension in the pelvic floor, because that's a lot of tension
Mm-hmm.
at your jaw. And so that can, and typically it's happening right at adolescence when we're also experiencing a new set of, let's say, experiences, or a new set of reality with
Mm-hmm.
menstruation. So a lot of women who are struggling with pelvic floor tension are struggling with jaw tension. A lot of women who have had braces are struggling with jaw tension and or pelvic floor tension. A lot of women who struggle with plantar fasciitis in the
In the
feet.
feet.
Yes, because the connective tissue that runs from the soles of the feet goes through the pelvic floor. So these are the questions I ask when I bring in a new member to my program. I ask all these questions because this is part of our body and it's all connected. Right.
Now,
And I haven't even talked about the breath. Like, we could talk for another hour just about the breath, to be honest with you. We
now
need to schedule another interview.
you're so silly. What's your youngest client?
Oh, well, I've had conversations actually with mothers who are learning my program, who are
Mm-hmm.
learning my yoga for their teen daughters who are already leaking because they are super athletes and they're
Uh,
already struggling with tightness and tension in the pelvic floor. So they're leaking when they run, when they laugh, sneeze, cough.
okay.
And so
So leaking can
teens,
start young. I didn't know this.
oh,
And that's why you
yeah.
said earlier age does not make a difference
Mm-hmm.
because it can
Mm-hmm.
start very young. Now my daughter had did gymnastics. Of course she hasn't addressed anything to me, but she did gymnastics from 4 to now 14 because she just stopped doing it last month. She hasn't told
Mm-hmm.
me any issues, but that's interesting to hear. Like
Yeah.
athletes, and she's going to be doing track in the spring. That's what she's transitioning
Nice.
to.
That was what I did. I went from
Really?
gymnastics
To
into track.
track?
Yep.
Oh, so
Yep.
that's like a
Soccer,
thing,
diving.
huh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good, good
She said
segue.
she's had enough of gymnastics. So
Yeah.
we're segueing
Yeah.
now into track. So we're going to see how
That's
that
fun.
goes.
That's
Very
fun. Yeah. We
interesting.
can experience pelvic floor dysfunction at a very young age. And there are very young people who are struggling with pelvic floor dysfunction for this reason or that. This reason or that.
Now, with your class, when someone does take your class, what can other other than the pelvic floor, what is one reason? Because do you provide coaching as well?
I do. Yes. So my online program
Mm-hmm.
is an online course.
Mm-hmm.
And the course teaches you everything you want to know and more about your
Mm-hmm.
pelvic floor and your core.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want more personalized support from me, I have 2 other levels available.
Okay.
And it's a
Okay.
membership program. And I have yoga that happens. And all of those are recorded so you can access them at any time. If you
Oh,
up level
nice.
to my highest program, you can have private consultation with me.
So you do have videos available.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Plenty. Yes.
Wonderful.
I
Okay.
record all my yoga practice. Yes. You can join me live, but you don't need to. You can just access the recordings and they're always there for you. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's at celebratethepelvicfloor.org.
Yes, because you gave me, it's basically the same thing, but I'm going to drop the get your freebie for
Yes, and
your
the
website.
freebie is a training that I did to give women the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I need to know the state of your pelvic floor
Yeah.
before I give you yoga. And so that free training gives you a really good introduction to why we're talking about this. Like, I talk a lot about the pelvic floor in that free training. I talk a lot about the breath in that free training. I talk a lot about your alignment and your posture
Mm-hmm.
in that free training. So that's a great place to start.
This is great. Now, what word of advice do you have for women out there that, number one, that have sexual issues, that might be suffering from pelvic floor instability or stress incontinence, urgent, what I think you said urgent incontinence, urge incontinence. So there's so many different word of advice that you can tap into if you can kind of mold it all into one. Because number one, we all know, and one of the big reasons why I started this podcast is because conversations like this are not had enough. You've given me quite a bit of nugget today of things I didn't know that I never even bothered to think about. Why would you be holding on so tightly to that goddamn muscle all day? It doesn't make no sense. If that's the case, you might as well walk around with your arm flexed all day. But I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
and women are doing that. If you're not having sex, that is a red flag. Talk to somebody. But women aren't doing it. Yeah. We don't do it. Even if it's something simple, if masturbation hurts, you need to address it. Or the incontinence that you might be experiencing, even as a young age, one of your clients, their daughter. So what word of advice do you have for our women?
So I love that question because here's the deal. We're doing it. We're having the conversation. And that is the top of the list when I say, okay, here are the things that I want to leave you with. The number one thing I want to leave you with is talk about it. Have the conversation. And some women are like, Julie, how do I have the conversation? If you're looking for conversation prompts, you've got to join my Facebook group. Okay. And I gave you that link too. We're going to include that link too here in the podcast. So you've got to join my Facebook group, and there is all sorts of advice in there about how to have this conversation, because that is the number one piece of advice that I want to give you is we're taking this topic away from taboo. Absolutely. There are so many women who are struggling in silence. There are so many women who are mired in shame. And shame is awful. And it's taken up space in that place of sexuality and sensuality and joy and creativity and creation, that pelvic floor, that low belly space. That is our place of joy and sensuality and sexuality. And we don't want to keep it muddled with shame and fear and worry and guilt and grief. We hold a lot of emotion in that space. So the more that we can talk about things, the more we can let go of shame.
Absolutely.
Right? Yes. And so that is my number one word of advice. Have these conversations. Talk about it. And one of the ways you can do so is just to mention me. There's this lady out there. Celebrate the pelvic floor. Her name's Julie, and she's always talking about sex and the pelvic floor and peeing and pooping and orgasm and all this stuff. So let's just look for her, because that can be a really great way. And that's typically the way that a lot of women have the conversation. They drop my name.
And that's another topic we didn't even cover, which is very important, orgasm, and how important that muscle is for orgasm. Yeah.
Yes. Those are the muscles that activate when we orgasm.
Yeah.
Yes. Pelvic floor. So we want to keep her happy and healthy, right? We want to keep her happy and healthy.
I like how you kept it simple. Talk about it and release the shame.
Yes.
Because that's really, truly what it is. Society has made us believe that these are not conversations you should have. You're a lady and you should keep that business to yourself and not discuss it. So basically what you're telling me is suffer in fucking silence.
Right. And that's what a lot of women are doing. And so when they come to me, they're like, oh my God, this is so freaking exciting. And we're laughing and we're dancing and we're crying. And yes, we're doing yoga too. I mean, there are all these wonderful things. And I'm teaching you how to breathe, because so many of us don't even breathe right. And I am here to tell you, if I can teach you how to breathe, I can teach you how to stabilize your pelvic floor.
Yeah. This is good. This is really good.
Fundamental.
This is very, very good. And then it's nice to know you said your mother. Does your mother still have the Shine company that she created?
She has a program called Shine. Yes. SHYNE.
Oh, SHY.
Stretch, heal, yoga, nurture, exercise, or energy. I can't remember the last E.
Oh, so it's an acronym.
So exciting. Yes, that's an acronym. Oh. And she's teaching in her in her community down in Florida and rocking and rolling. Oh, yeah. She's a big hit down there.
This is good. So your why was your mother. And now you have turned around and you have become her why for why she created her Shine program.
Yeah.
You and
Yeah.
Mom have been close for a very long time.
Yep.
Are you
We've been
the only
bouncing off
child?
of each other forever.
Are you,
Pardon?
are you the only child?
No, I'm not. I'm the second of 4.
Oh, Mama got 4 kids.
Mama got 4 kids. Yes. Yes. Hello, pelvic floor. So think about that. She had 4 babies and she had a school of gymnastics. So think about gymnastics. You're moving mats around. You're lifting up kids to, jump to the high bar and all, she had a very physical career, which she loved.
Yeah.
And she was super successful. She had it for 20 years.
That's a long time to run a gymnastics program.
After she retired the business, 10 years after that is when her pelvic floor was like, damn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mom is in her 80s?
Mom is 81 and she is
bless her heart.
Rolling.
Bless her heart. That's good. Yep. That's good.
She is kick-ass.
And I'm glad that you were able to fix her pelvic floor instability and she doesn't have to take anything, because what do you normally take for that? Oral medication or vaginal medication?
No, there are a lot of women getting surgery.
Oh, it's surgery.
Yeah, there are a lot of women getting surgery. And oh my gosh, that's a whole other conversation. Yes, there are a lot of different surgeries out there that women go to before they even practice one pose, because that's something that is recommended in the medical community. Hey, let's just, let's just go in there.
Yeah, let's just go in there.
Let's just do surgery. And I'm here to tell you, call me first.
Call Julie.
Send me a DM. Look me up.
Don't go to the hospital first.
Don't.
Call
because
Julie.
I'm telling you what, half of the women in my program, maybe not half, but maybe almost half, have already had surgery. And now they have new symptoms.
I see. Well, this is great. Julie, you provided us some awesome nuggets today. Thank you very much for the instructions at the beginning of, I don't even know what to call it, a little brief anatomy lesson that you gave us in the beginning.
Anatomy,
you know, because I like that, because they can actually listen and feel for themselves and, locate some of these parts that you were telling us. And I like how you ended with just talk about it. Release the shame, listeners, because at the end of the day, these are conversations, as we repeated many times today, that is important. We need to have them. You can't not be in pain, so you just choose not to have sex. You can't be having to poop, or, laughing, coughing, picking up your pocketbook, as Julie said, and you're going on yourself. That's not okay. Yeah. And don't jokingly say it to your girlfriends when you know it's a real problem. So, as always, I want to thank you, Julie, for being a guest on the show. I appreciate all the information you have provided us today. And her information will be on the website when this episode does go up. And as always, I want to leave with you guys to love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. Until the next podcast, guys, thank you for listening and have a great one. Thanks for tuning in to Fanpale Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.